Sometimes you can learn a lot from looking at old instruments about what they used to do and what the quality of the wood was. A lot of times how they were cutting it. A lot of the hot button issues today, like run out, does that really make a difference? So we're going to look at a few old guitars here as far as grain counts and some of this stuff goes. Block splitting, and maybe dispel some myths. All right, this is I think it's 1943. It's got the plastic buttons on it. Hank Williams had one of these. I think Martin has made a reproduction model of this, but it's a D28 herringbone. There's your Brazilian rosewood. And of course, a red spruce top. Now, if this guitar is one of the very few that I've ever seen that there is a little bit of evidence that they may have used a split block method to cut this. There's two explanations for what I'm going to point out to you. If you notice, this is the sapwood, or the outer part of the tree. Here's the joint. This would be the sapwood, and if you notice, it's quite a bit different color than the heartwood of the tree. Usually this happens from letting the wood sit around in some kind of a board or in a block and trying to air dry it, because the sapwood will, when you do that, when you don't expose it to immediate dry air, you will get a difference in color. Mother Nature will also do it, so this may not be any proof of split block cutting in years past, because a lot of times this will happen naturally inside the tree. They could have got to this tree just after it had died, and all it would have taken was a few weeks for this discoloration type of activity to go along. But a lot of the traditional methods of cutting, especially back in the 1800s and 1700s, they would try to dry these blocks, these split blocks, in billets, and then later split them open. At Old Standard, we get them open. We get the wood, the water coming out of the wood just as soon as we can get it out of the tree. This top here is kind of low grade. You'll notice that it does have some darkened grain lines in it, which is a sign of really stiff wood. We probably wouldn't be able to show you a real good look at the sound hole here, but you can see, if you start looking at the wood, you can see a lot of medullary. So this will tell you that this is a really well quartered piece of wood, which also makes me suspect that it didn't come out of a split block. This is kind of a bear claw area here, the end of a pitch pocket. Here's another little tiny pitch pocket type of defect. This was late in their use of red spruce, and by this time they were really having to scrounge to get enough red spruce to make their instruments out of. And of course in 1946 they switched over to Sitka. So 3 years after this guitar was made, they were making them out of Sitka. They continued to make a used red spruce that they had on hand for a number of years in odd special order guitars, or maybe when they ran a little bit short on Sitka, they would make a few of them. So you can see red spruce in a few Martins made after 1946 all the way up through the 50s, and there is even a few examples in the early 60s that had a red spruce top. All right, now if we'll go back in the most famous period of Martin guitar development. This is a 1934 D18. the records that Mike Longsworth published indicate there was only, this is one of the first 4 that was made. It's kind of had a hard life, but this is the original varnish on it. More of a fine-grained piece of red spruce, but if you orient the surface, you can see that there's quite a bit of runout, and when wood gets aged this much, it's very difficult to see, but there it is right there. You can see one side appears to be a different color than the other right along the joint. There's the joint. This side is reflecting light differently than the other side, even after all this old patina of aging is on the wood. This is also probably not, it didn't come out of most likely come out of a split block. This is very well quartered. You can see there's a lot of medullary showing up all the way across the face. So this is a very well quartered piece of wood, red spruce, Adirondack. And this is kind of cool. This is the old original varnish and what some of those early nitrocellulose lacquers did. And of course, that's mahogany. They were still stamping. This is the original tuners. They're out in the barn. But they were still stamping the C.F. Martin logo on the back of the headstocks in '34. You would have had to look at a lot of wood to determine it, but this is the outside of the tree where the joint is, right there. And consequently, there was some twist in the outside of the tree. That's why there is run out showing from one side to the other. Now, this is a 1923. It's one of the first years that they began to brace these guitars for steel strings. And it's a triple O. And if you look at the grain counts, you can see from our discussion of runout that this is the inside of the tree here. This is owned deeper down in the tree. There's not as much runout. You see very open grain counts near the joint, finer grain counts in the outer bouts. This is also probably not from a split block of wood. You've got these fine medullary all the way across this. This is a really well quartered piece of addy. There's another interesting thing about, at that time they were putting just straight bar frets rather than the T frets in the fretboard. So those are just pieces of steel laid into the ebony. Oh, an interesting old guitar. Of course, at that time, they also didn't have pick guards. This is a Collings 00 Honduran rosewood. Whoa, it's got some sawdust on it. That must have came from me. I think this is the only one of these that's, to this date, which has ever been equipped with a Honduran rosewood back and sides. But this is some more Adirondack. This is a bear claw piece, and you can see that there is a little bit of demarcation there. There's a little bit of difference in the way the light is reflecting from one side to the other. So we actually have a tiny bit of runout happening along there. And this is one of my personal guitars, so it doesn't bother me any. And of course, the most important thing is how it sounds. And of course, also bear claw, which is all along this was the outside of the tree, is very famous for not having a straight split, and that is contributing to that little bit of run out that you're seeing there. And pretty unbelievable volume for such a small guitar. Cool. Besides the Honduran that we have a lot of callings made out of, we also have been experimenting with this wood lately, and it looks like mahogany, maybe ribbon Cuban mahogany, but it's got a little bit redder tone, and it has the same density and stiffness per weight as Brazilian rosewood. It's called Ormego. A lot of Central American countries have this tree. They used to make knife handles out of it, and it's used pretty exclusively anymore for Central American marimbas. Here we got a real nice piece of, in fact, I think this came from the Holy Jesus log, a real nice piece of Adirondack. And of course, we're not exhibiting any run out at all there. In fact, it's kind of hard to even find out where the joint could be there. So it's pretty much a absolutely perfect piece of wood, medullary all the way across the face of it. And this was the outside of the tree where the joint is. It's finer growth there and a little bit more open growth as it got into the more of the center of the tree. But produces a what we think is a lot like Brazilian rosewood. Maybe we'll get Claude over here and have him play some of these.